All right, guys, James with River Lunacy. We are rained out, and that means we're not taking the boat. I'm not going to fight that nasty mess out there. I'm going to grab a coffee, and I'm going to clean this fishing reel right here. And normally I don't do this except for winter time because we're snowed in or whatever reason. But this is a perfect opportunity just to show you how important it is to clean your fishing reel. This is a regular old Garcia C3 6500, which is a great reel. I don't have any kind of problem with it whatsoever. I love Garcia reels, and this one is nice and dirty, so it's a perfect video quality kind of deal here. So I'm just going to kind of show you before, and I'll do a little after, and I'm going to show you why it's important to keep up with some of this stuff. All right, perfect opportunity to show you why it's important to take care of your fishing reels, or have someone do it that knows what they're doing. Here we go. First up is the drag washers. Okay, the old drag washers and some of the reels even today, they come with these, I don't know what you call it, vinyl, but they will actually almost melt. You can see in there, and I can't even get it out. So you know what that tells you. If you got 2 or 3 of these that are like this, you got about half the percentage of your drag working. So that's not good for reeling in 40-pound blue cats. Yeah, I can't even get that out. I'm gonna have to work on that. So you got that, and then your grease turns black. That's from dirt and age. Things are not going to run very smoothly whatsoever. So we're going to clean all this out. Brake plate, it doesn't even have any grease on it left, hardly. This stuff gets hot after being in the sun, and it melts, it seeps out, or if you sit there and wash it out, it's going to come out. That pinion gear, you can see it's all got black grease. It's just decayed. The grease is all melted away. It's not really in very good shape. Got a little tiny bit of salt deposits, it looks like, too, kind of caked up in here and there. That's gonna make things run pretty rough, you know. When I'm fishing, I like to have a reel that's nice and smooth, and I can trust in it, you know. So I do a lot of reel cleanings on my stuff to make sure things are running properly. You know, it's really important, because if you don't and you're out there, next thing you know, something's not working right, then you're down a rod. And sometimes I only take 1 rod, so I really got to trust in this. And your worm gear, that's real important to keep that nice and clean. This one's black and it's got caked up stuff. So you got a little paw tooth that runs back and forth there. And if that gets stuck and it starts grinding away, you lose that. you'll see all your line's going to gang up on one side. That means you're busted. I mean, and when that happens, I change both of them. They're not super expensive, but they're not real cheap, and it's a pain in the butt. So after I clean these, maybe every other month or so, I just put a couple drops of oil across there and make sure things are got some shine to them. I don't ever let anything go dry, you know. So we're going to clean this thing up, and we're also going to put some nice new drag washers in there. Upgraded Carbon Tex. It's a carbon fiber drag washer, is one of the best ones you can put in. And I don't put any grease on these. Some people do put a little grease on them. I want every bit of power I can get out of a drag, so I do not. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and clean this thing up. I'll show you a little bit of what it looks like afterwards, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's going on. One more little thing before we go clean this sucker up. Inside here is an instant anti-reverse bearing, also known as the IAR. And that's where I was talking about that black grease. That's what when you're reeling, it's nice and smooth. Well, when things are not nice and smooth, this is part of it. And there is a whole bunch of little roller pins inside this thing, and they go one way. That's why it's called an IAR. Some of these reels have a dog on them also. The C3 does not have a dog, which also clicks in underneath the gear on the main drive, and that also stops. This one only has one. So if this is not working properly, your handle is going to go backwards when you go to set the hook on a fish. And I've had that happen before. Sometimes they just go out, but a lot of times it's because the grease is no good in there, or it's completely dried out. Maybe you cleaned it because you were saltwater fishing. That's okay. But if this part goes bad, they are not fun to replace because it's a pressed in bearing, and you have to take two different sockets, a press. It's no fun. So it's very important to have your fishing reel serviced, upgraded, whatever you want to do there, you know. I also do upgrades myself. Of course, you've probably seen my other videos, but just another reminder. So that IAR bearing, when that gets cleaned, it has to be very gently cleaned. Like I said, it has little pins in there. They're not little balls, but they're actually little pins. And I've had them pop out before because early on, years ago, when I first started cleaning, I was just a little rough on things, and then I had to learn the hard way. So that gets cleaned real gently, and then you put a bunch of nice grease inside there to keep things nice and smooth. So let's go do it. Another thing about the worm gear inside this shield here, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it is caked. So if you have so much stuff in there and this is running and your drive, your line guide is running back and forth inside there, can you imagine how far you're really going to get a cast and how smooth that's going to be? Another perfect reason why it's so important to keep up with the fishing reels. Hopefully you can see. All right, so this is supposed to be a short video. I'm trying to really keep it that way. That IAR is nice and clean again. It's hard to see in there. Remember, it was all black and full of gunk. Brake plate frame, cogwheel's nice and clean. One of the big issues I noticed with every Garcia in the factory, they will cake that up with grease, and that doesn't need to have grease. It needs just a little bit of oil on that stem and a little oil, a few drops here and there. A bunch of grease is going to slow that down. That's connected with your worm drive, and that's going to decrease your casting. And there's the worm drive, nice and clean again, silver all the way through. You're going to have some stains every once in a while depending on what someone put on the reel before you got it, or those flimsy little drag washers will stain them gears. That's nothing to worry about. I've cleaned this thing to death. It's totally fine. I don't see any indications of any issues with this reel at all, except I did notice some rust spots in there on them bearings. We're going to change them on out. Not a big deal. Pinion's nice and clean. Everything's nice and clean. Then you start over with the little grease where it belongs, and it's like having a new reel again. All right, we got this all nice and cleaned up. Got some oil inside that worm drive there. I just put a nice little strip of oil on there. I maintain that once a month, maybe every other month or two. Definitely something to keep an eye on. You don't want it getting dried out, and you don't want it getting a bunch of grass and garbage in there. Put a nice little amount of grease inside the IAR. You want that to be generous in there. Not too sloppy though, of course. The gear system, I like to put grease on. Mainly anything metal on metal, I put some grease on. I do not like to overdo it because I don't want it going all over the place. Plastic on plastic, I put a little oil anywhere there's these stands that raise up and down. I put a little oil, just a little drop, it's all it takes. Cogwheel, and the cogwheel stand, I do a little oil. Inside here, up in there where that clicker slide goes, I like to put a little bit of grease up there, just for comfort and fun, I guess you could say. Makes things nicer. All right, we're all back together. 6500 Avery Garcia C3 baitcaster reel, nice and clean, all up to date, new bearings, new grease, new oil everywhere it needs to be. And that reel was sent out to me from WBP3 Outdoors. And this guy makes some really nice cat calls, rigs here. It's got a rattle, it's got the float, it's got a real nice hook, customized hook at that. Several different colors. Big old leader, or big swivel on there. And rubber bead in the bag. Big heavy duty sinker slide, put an 8 ounce on there. That tells you right there how big they are. I would say it would definitely hold probably a 10 or more. I'm not sure, mattering on what you're using. I put a bank sinker, 8 ounce bank sinker on last night to give it a shot. They're pretty sharp. He also has a guide service. And I do some favors for certain people out there every once in a while. He has a guide service, so he's a smart man for getting his reels cleaned up and up to date, you know, because last thing you need is a customer reeling in a giant and something goes wrong. So good for you, man. If you got any questions or want to know anything, I'm on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, and I'm on and fish brain. So hope you enjoy this. Remember to keep your stuff nice and clean. It's kind of like having an oil change, you know. You don't want to wait too long, right? Because if you do, you're going to have a big problem. And it's so much easier just to get something, keep up with it, instead of having to go out and buy a brand new fishing reel. So save yourself some money. If you can't do it yourself or you're afraid to, please contact me and I can help walk you through it to an extent, of course. So thanks for watching, guys. Remember, like, subscribe, and share. Thanks again.